Please be seated. Mr. Leach.
Mr. President, thank you. The government says that there are no Azerbaijani forces in the village. We submit that's not what the evidence shows. Firstly, the statement from the Nagorno-Karabakh officer, Major Manoukian, in 2010, very clearly says that there are 4 or 5 visible military positions and base stations in the village. And there are similar statements from other Nagorno-Karabakh officers submitted by the intervening government. The satellite report from the American Association for the Advancement of Science also confirms the existence of trenches and revetments in Gulistan village itself. And the image that we saw today again confirmed that. These are Azerbaijani positions. On this point, I also come back to the question of the reliability or otherwise of their evidence. And I do think this is important. The best evidence that they have come up with in relation to this, I think, is very unreliable. I referred to the 2 statements of Lieutenant Colonel Abbasov and Husseinov from 15th March 2012. If you look again at those, there are large passages of those 2 statements that are virtually identical. There are, if you look at 3 other statements from military officers taken on the same day, there are 2 quite critical sentences in those statements that are identical. They refer to most of the buildings being destroyed. Those sentences are identical. The statements you've had from the villagers, also the nearby villagers, they are formulaic statements that deal with the same issues very, very briefly. They are not proper witness statements. I think there is an issue about the reliability of those evidence. I come then to the question, the focus of the government today was on the issue of security and the impossibility of return because of security issues. And this is the question that Judge Pinto Albuquerque raised. And of course, he's absolutely right to point out that IHL imposes an obligation on the parties to protect the victims of international armed conflicts. There's no question about that. What we say in response to that is if at a particular point in time it's impossible for security reasons to allow return, well, first of all, there are a whole series of other steps that are and have always been possible. The right to compensation. There is no reason why, we've heard nothing again today from the government, why it would not be possible to set up a system to compensate people in the Sargsyan's position. There are many then particular steps that could and should have been taken that lead to either compensation or indeed return, establishing a proper regime of property ownership, publicising those details to everyone, establishing independent institutions and mechanisms to assess and enforce property claims. Again, we've heard nothing about that from the government as to why that has not been done, why it's not been possible. This court has struggled with similar issues in Exenides, Orestes and Dimopoulos, as we've mentioned. It's also possible that it would have been possible to negotiate staged returns. In 20 years of a conflict, 12 years since ratification, we say that the positive obligations also require all those steps, legal, political, diplomatic, judicial, and that could include negotiation of staged returns. This is dealt with in the Conciliation Resources report that's in your papers that talks about the example of Dayton, talks about for example, a Conciliation Resources report that's in your papers that talks about the example of Dayton, talks about, for example, establishing a zone of separation in a particular region, armies retreating from the zone, creating a demilitarized area under the authority of an international peacekeeping force. And that zone becomes the first place where returns take place. We've heard nothing from the government on any of this today again, other than reference to a 1991 order in relation to private exchanges. So there's nothing since they ratified the convention in 2002. We say it's utterly deficient in relation to its positive obligations. We've heard again about domestic remedies from the government. I just reiterate briefly that in the 7 years this case has been before communicated to the government, they've been able to refer to 2 specific cases, and those 2 cases are wholly irrelevant to the position of someone in the Sargsyan's situation. We heard today about the alleged destruction of houses. It was said that there was a reference to his own house being destroyed. Well, we've dealt with that in the witness statements very, very clearly. His father's house in the village was destroyed in the attack. Indeed, his mother died in the attack. He tried to go back to rescue her. He wasn't able to. Minas, his mother, died in a conflagration of his father's house. No question about that. The statements we've got from other villagers confirm, some of them as they were leaving the village at the time, saw that his Minas's house was still standing. It hadn't been destroyed. And there's quite a lot of other evidence. Statements from villagers, the statements from villagers about the general condition of the village show that there are substantial numbers of buildings still intact. The government today talked about complete destruction. That's not what the evidence shows. The statements from the villagers, the 22 photographs submitted by the Nagorno-Karabakh officer, show a number of buildings perfectly intact. The satellite report from the American Association for the Advancement of Science says that in 2005 there were 36 properties still intact. The map that was shown you today confirms that. You can see properties that haven't been destroyed. There's no particular evidence about Mr. Minas Sargsyan's house, and we have the villager's statement from 2010 saying that he saw the walls standing, had a dilapidated roof. If you were to ask Minas and Lena whether they would return to their old house with the walls standing and whether they would repair the roof, the answer, I'm sure, though I can't ask them today, would have been yes. In any event, of course, their complaint under Article 1 of Protocol 1, of course, subsists in relation to their land. So even if it were established that his property was destroyed and destroyed prior to April 2002, which we say it hasn't been, his claim over land subsists. 2 final points, Mr. President, if I may. There was a reference to the 1958 Village Charter, which the government say is unsourced. Well, you have the original Russian version of the 1958 Village Charter in your papers. My colleague, Mr. Gregorian, obtained it in the British Library. It is official Soviet publication published in Baku. We can give you the reference for the publication. I'm not going to do that now, but we can give it to you. It's an official document. The government say it's unsourced. It seems as if they haven't been able to locate it, but there's no question about its authenticity. Finally, Mr. President, we heard today from the government several times about their commitment to the principle, to the right to return and to restitution. We're encouraged by that, and we think that could encourage this court to order return and restitution, and also to deal with return and restitution in their general measures under Article 46. Mr. President, that concludes the submissions on behalf of the applicants. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leach. Who wants to take the floor? Yes, please.
Mr. President, distinguished members of the court, I will turn to the comments by the intervening state and the applicants, and then my colleagues will reply to the judge's question. First, I'd like to touch upon the AAS report and the pictures which we asked the court to take away from the disclosing version of the report. We've asked the court to do this because these pictures showed the military positions of Azerbaijani army outside the village, deep inside the territory of the Republic of Azerbaijan, even for 12 kilometers. And for the military reasons, we did ask the court to do this. This topographic map and the picture in the AAS report shows that the military position of the Azerbaijani army are outside the village. There is no single place in the AAS report saying that the Azerbaijani army has its position in the village itself. Even one trench showed on the figure 12, which is on the left from the village. It is not the trench, it is bank of the river. There is a spring flowing to the Injachai river, and it is shown from the satellite image as a trench. There is no reason to place the military trench on such a direction near the village. We also submit that the military positions of the Armenian forces are to the southeast of the Injachai river, which is not covered by the AAS report at all. That is why even this image, figure 12, doesn't show the military positions of Armenia, because they are situated within the woods and there is no vision from the satellite. As to the intervening government comment concerning that only ethnic Armenians were forced to leave their homes because of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, I would like to state that because of this conflict, more than 200,000 Azerbaijanis left their homes from Armenia proper, and about 800,000 of Azerbaijanis left their homes from Nagorno-Karabakh and surrounding territories of Azerbaijan. And the number of refugees from Azerbaijan, Armenian refugees, as far as I know, it's about 300,000. I will turn now to Professor Shaw to answer the judge's question.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the court. A quick response to some of the questions posed. Judge Gulumyan, her questions. First of all, the question about Azerbaijani populated villages in the same position as Gulistan. It's important to understand that the line of contact is not one single straight line. It is the area between two frontline positions. Gulistan is between the two frontline positions. This appears clearly from the AAAS report and indeed from Armenia's own pleadings. I'm instructed to say there is no Azeri populated village in the same position, i.e. between the two front lines. Secondly, the territory of Azerbaijan, which has been illegally occupied by Armenian forces, is, we believe, in the region of 16%, and we take this from the CIA fact book. Full references can be supplied